Hi and welcome back to MDriven. I had a lot of questions about how to solve things that isn't easily solved within Turnkey, like scanning a file for viruses or converting a 3D model to something. My standard answer is to create a satellite application with MDriven Framework. So I'm gonna do that in Visual Studio. There's a new template added for this simple scenario with a microscopic app which has a model. And this is what it looks like from the start, and it's just as easy as in MDriven Designer to add some other classes. Once you do, you have the C# icon and you press that to update the code. And once you have that, you have strongly typed C# code for everything in your model. And also the template comes with a view model showing one thing and has an action that brings that view model up, this first view. So straight from the box you should be able to start this. And you will have a VPF application using the what we call VecPof logic that follows all the actions and things like that. This is completely unstyled, so there's a lot to be said about that, but everything works and it's really easy to maintain. So if you have a need to have a SatelliteApp to communicate with your Turnkey server, this might be a good choice. So I added a new class. Let's see if I can show that information in this view. There are multiple ways to get this done, but this is one way. Creating the view model columns by the UI first strategy. Of course, you can just right click and create columns as you see fit. There's no drama with this. And whenever you change the model, you need to regenerate the code. And if you press Control, you regenerate all the code. And if you skip pressing Control, it's just the things that you have changed in this session. The good thing with being in MDriven Framework and C# is that methods can be implemented with C#. So here I can reference all the classes. And once you create new classes, make sure to send in the service provider. This is to let the objects know where they live, in which ecospace they live. And if I were to add an action that calls this method, and update the code, it would be easy to see that the OCL calls the C#, etc. So here I create objects by C#. So if I set a breakpoint here, I can see that this is the code called. So here you could use anything you do with C# to invoke other processes or applications or batch jobs or things like that. So there's no limitation just because you have chosen to be more smart with your time and doing most of the things with models, that you can't do the ordinary stupid things with code. Stupid things, the heavy things, the things that require a lot of time, etc. So, but this satellite app is nothing unless I can get some information into it from some external server or things like that. And one real easy way is the REST GET. It just takes an URL and optional password, user and password, and gets the data. So that's really easy. And we try to document things here, and if there's things that you don't find in the documentation, please let us know, and we will we work with this daily to improve it. But the REST GET is easy unless you need to send in optional headers and things like that. Then it's a bit more complicated, but nothing out of the ordinary. So let's have a variable here that we don't have yet, and let's get the result, which is a string result, in another variable. And I add some variables here. And I want to see the values of the variables, so I add two ViewModel columns to show them. Fixing up the view a bit like that. So let's try that out. And let's just grab any URL from any web page to see, and I got the web content, and that might be okay, but I really want something more structured. So I have another model here, and I'm gonna run that with local Turnkey prototyper. Is the quickest way to simulate the server of any kind. So this is some app that does like a chat client. Okay, I'm gonna grab this URL to see if I can use that just as well in here. Yes, I got that. But I really want some more structured information, so I'm gonna take that server model and add a new view model and say messages with REST, expose messages with REST, and I'm gonna grab messages. So take all the instances of messages and the text and also the username of the one posting the message, and I called it REST, but I also have to put it as REST allowed here. So now the server is updated, and let's see how you're supposed to call a server like that, like this. So let's use this part instead of that part, and the command should be the ViewModel name, which was exposed messages with REST. Like that, and let's try that in the application. And then I get JSON data back. Good. So what are we going to do with the JSON data then? I'm going to add another class, root to hold imported data. I'm going to say that that has a relation to some other class where I'm going to put the data in. I'm going to add a view model, the root for imported data for import, yeah. So, and let's wait with that for a bit. And we have this some result, but let's act on the JSON in the result. So here's a couple of new things that has been added to make things easier. First, I'm just going to create one of these objects, root to hold imported data, and in that I'm going to use the new functions called Tajson, Tajson, and this one really takes a view model that molds the JSON for you. So let's on the type we have view models and the root for import. So this is the template that we're going to use to handle the JSON, and then vSum result contains the JSON. And what do I mean that by molding it? Well, this is the JSON and how it will look like. Let's grab some of that and paste it here. So there's one list, it's called all messages. So all message, and then there are properties called text, and username. So did you see now I have on the column names I have the names of the JSON, but on the definition I have the definition of my model. So now the JSON will follow the view model and create things needed with the objects without any additional code. It will just follow the definition of the view model. Oops, root to hold imported data is not the type name. That is probably because I forgot to update the generated code after adding the class. So let's do that and rebuild. I have the JSON, and now it has created some other classes with the messages from the message app. So that was all it took to actually get data from some server. Any server that exposes REST IPEs. So, and if we have done that, we might want to manipulate this information in some way. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of showing, let's see, I'm in the wrong class here. So the imported objects, the imported data, and the link to some other class, because if I watch the model, I see I have the root and then the association to some other class, and that's the one I was after. I'm gonna set the attribute to something. Just change its value here. So that would be one way to act on data. Of course, you could call some C# function that does something that you need to increase the data value. But now I want to post it back into maybe the same server, maybe another server. And I'm going to use REST post, I think, and that takes a target URL and a username, password, and a name of a nesting. That's one way of doing it. There's actually the new things with Tajson that won't work because they are only changing existing JSON as strings or objects and turning them back and forth. But if it's a turnkey server you're writing to, we can use the remote turnkey set string value. That can actually write JSON or anything you need to a specific place. So let's try that one. Let's remove this, and so it takes a session ID, and so we need a session ID. Let's do that. Let's see. I'm gonna connect and get the session. And what does it want? URL to turnkey and a username and password. Some URL. And we're skipping username and password for now. And we put the session value here in a variable which we don't have yet, and we want to have the session and then the VM class ID to write to. Gonna come back to this, and the column to write to in that view model. And finally we need the value to write as well. So this is what we need to do. And we need a variable for this. That would probably do it. Let's go to the server and see if we have any place where we can write. Let's take the auto forms here. Just to test things out. So searching for messages, let's just take one of these and a good way is to check the debug view to find the view model the VM class ID. So this is the way it's supposed to be formed. Let's just paste that in and hard code it like that. And then we have the one attribute called text, or a column called text. So like, let's use that one. And then just to verify that we're on the right track, we can put any value here really. And that would be even easier to make it like that, and then just try. Okay. So will that be enough to send the information into that view? Send stuff back. And let's switch back and see. No, it hasn't updated, so that wasn't enough. And I had a bit of debugging to understand why it wasn't enough, and then it was actually quite simple. I didn't save the value, and it was saved in others, or it was sent to another session, of course. So what I did was to open the server model and add an action called save that just do self-vm.save, and then I call that action after we have set the data. So now I'm gonna push that one again, send stuff back, and then it's just trying. So does it work? Let's see. Okay, this not. Let's see. So the server wasn't started. Does it work? Question mark. How come it doesn't? Okay, does it work? So now we have one value, and you push that button one time, and we wait here until this resyncs, just trying. Okay, so now we have actually shown how to write things back from the SatelliteApp into a Turnkey server as well. And of course, you could use any data to send up there, and if you send up JSON, you can act on it just as we did on the client. So to summarize, we created a simple VPF app with MDriven Framework. And the good thing here is, of course, that we can do anything we can do with C#. And then I showed how to pull data into this simple Satellite app. And then I showed how you can use Tajson functionality to turn any JSON into objects. With very little code. And show that you can easily write data from the Satellite app back to Turnkey. So that was what I was aiming to show. Thank you for watching, and remember to check back. Thanks, bye.